It started with a joke. 6 men walked into Murphy's Tap in Boise, Idaho, laughing louder than they should have, boots stomping as if they owned the place. Their eyes landed on a woman sitting alone near the jukebox, sipping from a short glass, her silver hair tied in a tight bun and a black eye patch covering her right eye. "Aye, lady. Hope you brought your parrot," one of them barked. She didn't even flinch. But when one of them yanked off her eye patch just to see what's underneath, the room went dead silent. And within minutes, a police officer walked through the door and froze. And in that instant, everything changed. Murphy's Tap sat in downtown Boise, where red brick buildings leaned slightly forward like old men eavesdropping on traffic. The neon sign buzzed in green and gold above the door, casting a halo over the icy sidewalk. Snow was melting slowly along the curbs, leaving behind streaks of slush that cars dragged. Inside, warmth clung to the wooden walls like an old friend. Christmas lights hung year-round above the bar shelves, blinking lazily above rows of whiskey, bottles and half-forgotten bourbons. The jukebox in the back played Merle Haggard on a loop, and the faint scent of fried pickles and spilled beer filled the air. Pool balls cracked in rhythm. Laughter erupted from a booth near the dartboard. It was Friday night, just past 8 p.m., and Murphy's was alive. Locals packed the booths, teachers, delivery drivers, retirees who played poker. A group of young nurses occupied a corner table, sipping ciders and sharing fries. At the bar stood Rick Murphy, owner and bartender, polishing a glass and nodding to every regular like he'd known them since birth. Rick was in his late 50s, with a belly he didn't try to hide, and a mustache as thick as a snow shovel. His arms, covered in faded tattoos, flexed under a well-worn flannel shirt as he poured drinks and refilled baskets of peanuts. He was the kind of man who believed a firm handshake solved most problems. No one questioned her presence. She'd been coming in always at the same time, always in the same seat, far end of the bar, near the jukebox, one stool removed from everyone else. Her name, as far as anyone knew, was Ellie. Ellie didn't talk much, didn't smile often either. She wore dark jeans, black boots, and a thick brown sweater that clung to her shoulders like armor. Her right eye was hidden behind a black patch, the kind sailors wore in old cartoons. Some assumed she'd lost the eye in a car accident. Others whispered about cancer. But no one ever asked. At 8:19 p.m., the front door burst open with a gust of cold air and a chorus of loud voices. 6 men entered wearing beanies, denim jackets, and the swagger of people who thought the room would bend for them. One of them slapped the "no smoking" sign as they walked in, laughing. Rick glanced at them and gave a polite nod. He'd seen their type before. He didn't like it. The 6 took over the pool table and started calling for beers like they were commanding. A ship. One of them lit a cigarette anyway, and Rick had to walk over and point at the sign again, tapping it twice. The man rolled his eyes but put it out. At first they ignored Ellie completely. But it didn't take long for one of them, stocky, beard like an oil rag, to nudge his buddy and point. "Check her out," he muttered, grinning. "Looks like a pirate who lost her ship," said the one in the trucker hat. "Wonder what treasure." "She's hiding under that patch," another snickered. Rick raised his eyes from the counter but didn't say anything yet. It wasn't the first time someone made a dumb comment in his bar, but something in his gut clenched. Ellie took a slow sip of her drink. Her left eye, cold as winter glass, flicked toward the mirror behind the bar. Not toward the men, not directly. The tension was building, but she remained still. And that's when it began. The laughter started soft, like background noise, but within minutes it rose above the jukebox and swallowed the room. The 6 men were louder now, bolder. One of them, a wiry guy in a camo vest, chalked a pool cue and looked straight at Ellie. "Hey, darling, hope you brought your parrot," he called out, grinning with yellowed teeth. A few patrons chuckled uncomfortably, unsure whether to laugh or step in. Rick placed his towel on the bar. His jaw was tight now, eyes locked on the group. He started to say something, but Ellie lifted one hand slightly, not even looking up. A silent gesture. Let it go. The self-appointed leader of the crew sauntered toward her. His boots thudded on the floor, silencing nearby conversations. He leaned against the bar next to her, too close. You know, he slurred, some women wear pearls, some wear lipstick, and some wear a patch like they're Captain Hook. Ellie took a long, slow breath. She didn't look at him, just stared straight ahead at the mirror behind the bar where his reflection hovered beside hers, small and unimpressive beside the calm storm she carried. Hey, I'm talking to you, he said louder. Ain't polite to ignore a man. Still she said nothing, and that silence, it was worse than any insult. It made him feel invisible. That's when he did it. With a sudden, reckless motion, he reached forward and ripped the patch from her face. The bar froze. Conversations halted. Pool cues stopped mid-air. A bottle clinked softly behind the counter, and even the jukebox crackled to silence as the next track struggled to load. Her eye socket was empty, a deep hollow where the right eye had once lived. But it wasn't just empty. It was scarred. A crescent of pink flesh ran from her brow to her cheekbone, raised and jagged. He took half a step back, suddenly unsure of himself. Someone at the booth whispered, "Jesus." Rick stepped out from behind the bar, voice sharp now. "That's enough," he barked. But the other 5 were already laughing again, trying to soften the moment, acting like it was still a joke. "Sheesh, relax. It's just a joke," one said. "Didn't know she was that sensitive," added another. "Hell, I thought pirates were tough," the bearded one said, forcing a laugh. Ellie stood up. She wasn't tall. She wasn't loud. But when she stood, something shifted in the room. A presence, like gravity remembering its job. She looked directly at the man who pulled the patch. No anger, no fear. Just a cold, level stare that made him feel 10 inches tall. Then she moved toward the back exit of the bar with the grace of someone who had moved through worse places than this. Rick picked up the landline under the counter, his hand trembling. "Yeah," he said into the receiver. "It's Rick, Murphy's Tap. I've got a situation." The patrons were whispering now. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked at the 6 men with open contempt. No one laughed anymore. 10 minutes later, the door opened again. 2 police officers entered. One younger, barely 30, the other older, with salt and pepper stubble. The moment they stepped in, the younger one scanned the bar, and then he saw her, Ellie, standing near the back, arms crossed, her eye patch once again in place, her jaw tight. He stopped mid-stride, his eyes widened, his breath caught. And for a second, the cop looked like he was 19 again, lost and afraid. "Major Carter?" he asked, voice shaking. "Ma'am, is that you?" The 6 men looked from the cop to her, confusion blooming on their faces. But for Rick and everyone else in Murphy's Tap, it was already clear. This woman wasn't just wearing scars, she had earned them. The bar was dead quiet. The younger officer took a slow step forward, like approaching sacred ground. His voice broke slightly as he said again, softer this time, "Major Ellie Carter." Ellie nodded once. "You probably don't remember me," he said, now standing a few feet away. "Corporal David Rios, 103rd Infantry, Kabul Province. I was the comms guy. You pulled me out of a burning Humvee." The words dropped like stones on the wooden floor. One of the 6 men coughed nervously. Another stepped back instinctively, his boots squeaking on spilled beer. The color drained from their faces. Rick stood behind the bar, arms folded, saying nothing. Watching. David's hand went to his collar, instinctively reaching for something. A small silver medal, chipped and weathered, hung on a chain beneath. His uniform shirt. He pulled it out and held it like a cross. "You gave me this," he said. his voice cracking. Said I deserved to carry something that reminded me why I lived. Ellie didn't speak. She just stared at the metal, then back into his eyes. Rick cleared his throat and looked at the group of 6. "Let me tell you boys something," he said, voice thick. "Ellie Carter isn't just some regular. She's the reason this place still has sons and daughters coming home." David turned to the crowd, his voice steadier now, the weight of the moment giving him strength. It was 2009, Afghanistan. Our convoy was ambushed outside Bazarak on the way to Kabul. RPGs from the ridge. We were boxed in, burning. Everyone scrambled for cover, but I was pinned, unconscious in the back seat of the lead vehicle. The gas tank was leaking. Flames were everywhere. He paused, looking at Ellie with something bordering on reverence. She didn't hesitate. She ran through gunfire, dragged me out by the vest. She took shrapnel across her face and neck when the second RPG hit 20 feet away. He looked at the 6 men, their faces blank, mouths slightly open. She never once asked for a medal. She didn't go on talk shows, didn't post about it. She disappeared, and now I know where she went. Here. The silence that followed was heavy. The nurses in the back had stopped whispering. The poker group near the jukebox sat up straighter. Even the dartboard crowd had frozen mid-throw, and the 6 men, loud, proud, arrogant, now looked like children who had just shattered a sacred relic. David looked at Ellie. "Ma'am, I've thought about you every year since that day. I've thanked you in my prayers. I wore this medal in my wedding, and every time I hold my daughter, I remember that. I owe that to you." Ellie finally spoke. "I saved you because I was supposed to, because that's what we do. We don't leave anyone behind." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word, and she looked down, hiding it with another sip. It wasn't time for applause. It was time for respect, and now they understood. The woman they mocked, the pirate, the joke, was the reason a man had lived long enough to become husband and father. The 6 men stood frozen. They weren't laughing anymore. They weren't smirking. Their earlier swagger had evaporated, replaced by an awkward stillness. It was as if someone had cracked open a door to a world they didn't understand, and now they weren't sure how to step through it. The police officer, David Rios, took off his cap and held it in both hands. His voice was steady now, but his eyes were still wide with disbelief. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," he said softly to Ellie. "After Kabul, they told us you were medically discharged. They said you'd disappeared." Rick, still behind the bar, let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked at the 6 men, then back at Ellie. Rick stepped out from behind the bar and walked to stand beside her. He crossed his arms and stared at the 6 men. "I've seen drunks, fighters, blowhards. But tonight," he shook his head. "Tonight, I saw boys pick on a woman with more spine than all of you combined." The group didn't speak. The man who pulled her patch looked like he was choking on regret. The 6 men stood like they were in front of a tribunal, but there were no gavels here. Just eyes, dozens of them, watching, weighing. Officer David Rios took a step toward them, one hand resting lightly on his duty belt. Not in threat, but in authority. "You assaulted a veteran tonight," he said plainly. Pulled off her eye patch like it was a joke. The man who did it, Jake, lowered his eyes. "It was stupid," Jake mumbled. "Didn't know." The older officer beside him spoke up now. "You ever touch another person like that again? We'll charge you with battery. You understand?" Jake nodded. "Yeah. Yes, sir." Rick leaned across the counter, pointing a thick finger toward the group. "You're banned from this bar," he said. "Indefinitely. You can go drink somewhere that tolerates cowards." Another man in the group opened his mouth as if to protest, but stopped himself. Then Jake took a slow step forward. His eyes found Ellie, still seated on her stool, her back straight, her eye on him like a soldier measuring distance before a strike. Jake cleared his throat. "I was wrong," he said, barely above a whisper. Didn't see you. I just saw the patch. Thought it was funny. He paused. But it ain't. You're tougher than I'll ever be. I'm sorry. Another man, the one in the trucker hat, stepped forward. Me too. I was stupid. And with that, they turned and left. One by one. Quietly. The way shame walks when it knows it's been seen. The door closed behind them with a soft clang of the bell, and the weight in the room lifted. David turned back to Ellie. Would you let me buy your next round, ma'am? I just won't drink together because I'm on duty. She cracked the faintest of smiles. Only if you stop calling me ma'am. I'm retired, not royalty, he chuckled. Deal. If you enjoyed this story, click the like button, write in the comments what you like most and where you are watching it from, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next story, especially for you.